Hey, welcome to Sci-Fi Secrets. So, if you liked iRobot, then you will love Caves of Steel. iRobot was pretty clearly an early version of Caves of Steel, in my opinion. iRobot was written in 1950. The protagonist is a detective who dislikes robots, who is solving a murder related to robots. Caves of Steel was written in 1953. The protagonist is a detective who dislikes robots, but is solving a murder case related to robots. But while the bad guy in iRobots was a cliché robot gone bad, Caves of Steel is much more about political intrigue. Earth has changed. Humanity has changed. The human race now lives on 51 worlds. Earth and the 50 spacer worlds. The spacer worlds have all embraced robots into their societies and integrated them into the point that losing them would destroy their economies and completely change their way of living. Earth, however, incubated an old prejudice against the robots. A hatred that was already around hundreds of years before during the time of iRobot, another incident, by the way, which further spread the idea that all robots were inherently bad on Earth. Because as you might guess, a killer robot trying to take over society didn't do much for their public opinion. So while the spacers loved the robots, the Earth residents hated them. Because of this, the 50 spacer worlds have leapt ahead in technological advances, whereas Earth has languished. This has turned Earth into the backwoods of the galaxy, poor, uneducated, and bigoted compared to the 50 spacer worlds. In a scene that proves that Isaac Asimov was either ahead of his time or that humans never really change, we see a Karen in the wild braying about wearing a mask and her rights to spread diseases. A customer at the shoe store complaining about being served by a robot and how she was in a rush, yet had the time to make a scene rather than just be served. Apparently oblivious to the fact that she herself was the one creating the problem that she was complaining about. Just like the anti-maskers who are complaining about the lockdowns they themselves are prolonging by refusing to do their part and wear a mask. So either Asimov could see the future, or, more likely, people never really change. Most of Isaac Asimov's books have political messages in them, but even as a kid who knew nothing of politics, I still loved them. Especially this book. So it's called Caves of Steel because the entire population of Earth lives in domed cities that have regulated the air quality, temperature, and anything else needed. The main character, Elijah Bailey, is a decent detective, but no one was ready for a murder in Spacertown, the only spaceport left on Earth, a place run by the Spacers themselves, as no citizen of Earth had any desire to leave, and had nowhere to go even if they did. Spacer worlds would never let a disease-infested Earther live on their sterile, disease-free planets. And the Spacer worlds had enough ability to wipe out the Earth completely, so angering them would not be a good idea. So Elijah Bailey, or Lige as he's known, was put on the case, but the Spacers wanted a detective of their own involved, but they were too scared to come to Earth themselves, so instead, they sent a robot as Lige's partner. The classic odd couple, the robot hater and the robot, just like the old TV show. At least I think that's how it went anyway, my memory's a little fuzzy. He seemed friendly enough. There were fine wrinkles on his forehead and a certain flabbiness to the skin below his eyes and just under his chin. His hair was thinning, but showed no signs of gray. His large ears stood away from his head, giving him a humorous and homely appearance that comforted Bailey. Early that morning, Bailey had looked once again at the pictures of Spacetown that Enderby had taken. R. Daniil had just arranged the Spacetown appointment, and Bailey was absorbing the notion that he was to meet Spacers in the flesh. Somehow that was considerably different from speaking to them across miles of carrier wave, as he had done on several occasions before. The Spacers in those pictures had been, generally speaking, like those that were occasionally featured in the book films. Tall, red-haired, grave, coldly handsome, like R. Daniil Oliva. R. Daniil named the Spacers for Bailey, and when Bailey suddenly pointed and said in surprise, "That isn't you, is it?" R. Daniil answered, "No, Elijah, that is my designer, Dr. Sarton." He said it unemotionally. "You were made in your maker's image?" asked Bailey sardonically, but there was no answer to that, and in truth, Bailey scarcely expected one. The Bible, as he knew, circulated only to the most limited extent on the outer worlds. And now Bailey looked at Hans Fastolfe, a man who deviated very noticeably from the spacer norms in looks, and the Earthman felt pronounced gratitude for that fact. "Won't you accept food?" asked Fastolfe. He indicated the table that separated himself and Ardenil from the Earthman. It bore nothing but a bowl of varicolored spheroids. Bailey felt vaguely startled. He had taken them for table decorations. Ardenil explained, "These are the fruits of natural plant life grown on Aurora. I suggest you try this kind. It's called an apple and is reputed to be very pleasant." Fastolfe smiled. Ardenil does not know this by personal experience, of course, but he is quite right. Bailey brought an apple to his mouth. Its surface was red and green. It was cool to the touch and had a faint but pleasant odor. With an effort, he bit into it, and the unexpected tartness of the pulpy contents hurt his teeth. He chewed it gingerly. City dwellers ate natural food, of course, whenever rations allowed it. He himself had eaten natural meat and bread often, but such foods had always been processed in some way. It had been cooked or ground, blended or compounded. Fruit now, properly speaking, should come in the form of sauce or preserve. What he was holding now must have come straight from the dirt of a planet's soil. He thought, I hope they've washed it at least. Again he wondered at the spottiness of spacer notions concerning cleanliness. Fastolfe said, "Let me introduce myself a bit more specifically. I am in charge of the investigation of the murder of Dr. Sarton at the Spacetown end as Commissioner Inby is at the city end. If I can help you in any way, I stand ready to do so. We are as eager for a quiet solution of the affairs and prevention of future incidents of the sort as any of you city men can be." "Thank you, Dr. Fastolfe," said Bailey. "Your attitude is appreciated." So much, he thought, for the amenities. He bit into the center of the apple and hard, dark little ovoids popped into his mouth. He spat automatically. They flew out and fell out to the ground. One would have struck Fastolfe's leg had not the spacer moved it hastily. Bailey reddened, started to bend. Fastolfe said, pleasantly, "It's quite all right, Mr. Bailey. Just leave them, please." Bailey straightened again. He put the apple down gingerly. He had the uncomfortable feeling that once he was gone, the lost little objects would be found and picked up by suction. The bowl of fruit would be burnt or discarded far from Spacetown. The very room they were sitting in would be sprayed with viricide. He covered his embarrassment with brusqueness. He said, "I would like to ask permission to have Commissioner Enderby join our conference by Trimensional Personification." Fastolfe's eyebrows raised. "Certainly, if you wish it. Daniil, would you make the connection?" Bailey sat stiff in discomfort until the shiny surface of the large parallel pipe in the corner of the room dissolved away to show Commissioner Julius Enderby in part of his desk. At that moment, the discomfort eased, and Bailey felt nothing short of love for that familiar figure, and a longing to be safely back in the office with him, or anywhere in the city for that matter. Even in the yeast pre-processing portion of the Jersey yeast vat districts. Now that he had his witness, Bailey saw no reason for delay. He said, "I believe I have penetrated the mysteries surrounding the death of Dr. Sarton." Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Enderby springing to his feet and grabbed wildly, and successfully, at his flying spectacles. By standing, the commissioner had thrust his head out of the limit of the Trimensic receiver and was forced to sit down again, red-faced and speechless. In a much quieter way, Dr. Fastolfe, head inclined to one side, was just as startled. Only Daniil was unmoved. "Do you mean," said Fastolfe, "that you know the murderer?" "No," said Bailey. "I mean there was no murderer." "What?" screamed Enderby. "One moment, Commissioner Enderby," said Fastolfe, raising a hand. His eyes held Bailey's, and he said, "Do you mean that Dr. Sarton is alive?" "Yes, sir, and I believe I know where he is." "Where?" "Right there," said Bailey, pointing firmly at Daniil Oliva. Believe it or not, there were no spoilers in that. And keep in mind that this was written in 1953. Yet Asimov predicted video conferencing, the parallel piped, perfectly, even realizing the limits of its ability when Enderby stands up and his head goes out of frame. As I already stated, Caves of Steel is set about 1,000 years after I, Robot, and about 20,000 years before the new Foundation series that just came out. The Caves of Steel are an early version of Trantor, and spoiler warning, Daniil Oliva is still alive in the times of the Foundation series, and in the book series, he is the motivating force behind those books. The Caves of Steel and its sequel, The Naked Sun, are Daniil's origin books just as much as they are Elijah Bailey's mystery books. Both are amazing books, and I strongly suggest you read them. They are legitimate mysteries in the fact that you are given all the info you need and can solve them yourself before the big reveal. If you like that, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'll be trying to get a video out at least once a week from here on out, so please sub and help me build the channel. Thank you for watching.